The project started out as a game that would be similar to the classic Atari game Frogger, where the player progresses from point A to point B while avoiding obstacles. Although it maintained its feel as a retro adventure game, instead of being an 80s game as originally intended, that retro period ended up being more of a 90s stylized game. Welcome to Cliff Climber, a 2D adventure game with elements of 3D, where players will make their way up a cliffside using variations of climbing, jumping, and grappling while avoiding obstacles. I believe that the QTEs, QuickTime events, that I designed worked very well. It started out as a rough idea from a YouTube tutorial video which explained how to make a QTE. However, this was only updating a UI text and checking for input. It did not show how to implement it across an entire game over multiple instances. Therefore, several issues had occurred as the development process proceeded. The team and I had a variation of ideas that we thought would be very good to implement during the development process. However, time management and constant coding bugs kept occurring, followed by an issue that stemmed from Perforce. Some of the skills that I have learned that I found most useful during my time at Capstone Project are reading and dissecting code to understand it, iterating code over to make it better, implementing new features and mechanics that I have never done. One of the most efficient approaches stemmed from Armando and myself on how to most efficiently get our ideas from Sketch into Unity implementation. We decided to sketch on graph paper for scale, transfer to Google Draw for design, and then place those images directly into Unity as a template. This process worked exceptionally well. Parenting items for the sake of neatness in Unity does not always work in your favor. If the child of the parent is not removed before adjustments, the values of those objects become inaccurately skewed. Quite a few times, things needed to be adjusted, causing a great deal of monotony during the building process. Skill sets that I have found to be most beneficial: working in a team setting with members of different skill sets and personalities, an increase in coding skills thanks to team members' tutelage, time management and task documentation for organization, creating game layouts that take into consideration all aspects of the game process coherently. The horizontal scrolling of the levels that we implemented was an interesting project. Instead of having the level created on a cylinder, we decided to break the level into several pieces so that we could move those pieces to the opposite end when needed to give the illusion that you could go on forever. This created issues of its own, but I think the flat effect that it caused was worth it in the end. I think the enemies should have been created as a group project rather than just having one person working on them. They could have played a more significant role in the game had more eyes been looking at them earlier in the development cycle. Skills that I found most useful: scaling the project to fit the capabilities of the team working on it, working on a team scattered over various continents, clear and concise communication over diverse mediums. The use of the raycast and layers was an idea that worked very well for the detection and combat initiation between enemies and the player. The use of colliders and triggers would have the same effect. Use of the former allowed me to give enemies line of sight. This was crucial for enemies like the vulture. This technique in stage 1 really streamlined the process and cut down on the development time, as a majority of the research had already been done. The addition of ranged attack for some enemies was an idea that, in the end, did not pan out. The time constraints that we had meant that the focus on a single combat style, melee or range, was a necessity, and unless everything fell into place, the mixed combat style was just the icing on the cake. Skills that were most useful to me: the use of layers to isolate what is needing to be targeted in code, better programming technique and habits, how using general code can interfere with unintended areas of a larger game, how to program a more complex AI without using a state machine. As mentioned earlier, a technique that really worked for the team, especially during the earlier stages of development, was the system of paper to Google Draw and then into Unity. One process that would have worked flawlessly had we a better establishment of constant communication is how the level design was handed off to the next member of the team. Had we been more diligent about communication, the design process could have gone smoother and rapidly. Skills that I've acquired: communication is essential even in a small team setting. Documentation and organizational implementation. Time management is a dire consequence. Work at least 1 hour per day even if you don't want to. Don't be afraid to ask for help if you're having trouble. And finally, take criticism openly. Others that are not close to your project can offer you useful insight.